Alrighty, so I wrote on Facebook earlier that I was gonna make a video. Okay, my camera's blurry. Alright, so I wrote on Facebook earlier that I was gonna make a video to talk to you guys about something that happened to me today. And so basically, what happened was that my professor asked me to recite a poem in class because I had to write this essay about women in psychology and whatnot. And I just said that the way that I would promote women's rights and stuff like that would be through my poetry. So she asked me to write to not to write a poem, to recite a poem in class for the last day. So I decided to recite the poem, and I decided to recite my poem Women's True Identity. Reclaiming Women's True Identity, which is on YouTube on my channel. So the thing about that poem is that it talks about God like a lot. And you guys know I'm a Christian. That's me, that I have to talk about God. But before class, I started thinking, and even earlier in the day, I was thinking like, wow, what if I recite this poem in class and it's like offensive because I'm in an educational environment and it's offensive to people, and because it talks about God and stuff. And in my mind, I'm like, wait, like, since when is Jesus offensive? And like, I was kind of ashamed of myself for even thinking that, or even thinking like, wow, I can't talk about Jesus in school because someone's going to get offended. Let's think, like, the last time that Jesus was offensive was when he got crucified. So where do we get this mentality of like God and, talking about Jesus being offensive? I want to say we get it from America. America has this whole thing about being politically correct all the time. And so by politically correct, I mean like you don't want to offend anyone. You don't want to say anything that anyone's going to get offended by. But by being politically correct in not talking about God and stuff, aren't we in a way denying God? Aren't we in a way denying Jesus by not speaking about him? And not to say that we should be offensive on purpose. I'm not saying that we should be offensive, but aren't we being offended by being told not to talk about Jesus, by being told not to talk about God in certain places? And doesn't that also then come in contradiction with the First Amendment right that we have with freedom of speech and freedom of religion? Just something to think about. But I just feel like the world's mentality has been so ingrained into us about like, oh no, be careful, you don't want to offend this group or you don't want to offend that group. And at the end of the day, talking about God, Jesus is not offensive. Jesus was not offensive when he was here. People took him as offensive because they didn't want to believe the message that he had. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's what the world wants, for us to be quiet and not talk about Jesus. And, I feel like, am I comparing America to the Pharisees that didn't want Jesus to talk? No, I'm not doing that. But I am saying that to a certain extent, we as Christians, when we decide not to speak about God in order to be politically correct, I feel like we're denying him and we're spitting on him and we're killing him and crucifying him the same way that the Pharisees did by not speaking about him and by not bringing about his message. To a certain extent, I feel like we're doing the same thing because we're basically keeping him hushed and trying not to talk about him. I'm not saying, that every second of every minute of every day you should be going and talking about God. Obviously, there's other things that we have to get done too. We're not going to be idle. But what I'm saying is that Jesus said in the Bible, he said, if you deny me on earth, I will deny you before my Father in heaven. And so what I'm saying is, why should we be afraid? Why should we be afraid to speak about God when we're here on earth? We shouldn't be. And I feel like by being afraid of speaking about God, to a certain extent, we're denying him. And am I being extreme? Maybe a little bit. But I want you to really analyze your life. Because I'm thinking about my situation today. And I was almost going to recite a whole different poem because I was like, well, this other poem doesn't talk about God that much. And I'm going to be very real with you guys. I really was going to recite a different poem that didn't talk about God that much because I didn't want to offend anyone. But at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know if somebody in that room needed to hear about God today. I don't know if somebody in that room needed to hear the message that was in that poem. And so I did go through with it. I did end up reading and reciting the poem in class today, and I thought, I was afraid for a second that people were going to judge me or that people were going to be offended or whatever, or ridicule me. But I feel like at the end of the day, it was like the enemy putting those thoughts in my mind so that I wouldn't go and speak what I had to say. I didn't have a reason to be afraid. The enemy had a reason to be afraid of me because of what I was going to say and because of the people that I potentially reached out to today. And so those thoughts in my mind were really just, I feel like the enemy trying to persuade me and deter me from doing what God was asking me to do, from taking the opportunity that I was given to talk about God. And so I just feel like I want to exhort to you guys that wherever you are, like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to speak about God. Don't be afraid to put the gospel out there, because what are we God gave us a mouth so that we can speak, not so we can be silent and be afraid that people are going to judge us or that people are going to get offended. That's not what it's about. Being a Christian is not about, yeah, we talk about God, we preach about God when we're at church and when we're around our Christian friends, but being a Christian is about being out there in the real world. And being a Christian when you're out in the real world, not just when you're in church. What good does that do if you talk to people who already know about God? We need to reach out to other people. We need to reach out to the world that doesn't know him. It's our responsibility. The message of God is his love. God is love. And he just wants to share that love with everyone. But if we don't speak and we don't spread that word, how is anybody gonna, receive Jesus Christ if we don't do that? We have to go out and do it ourselves too. It's not just about preaching in a church to Christian people. The odds of people showing up at a church on their own are very slim. So we need to go. We need to invite them. We need to talk to them on our own, And it's not just about church attendance. It's about a relationship with God. I'm not even talking about religion. This is not about religion at all either. It's about a relationship with God. And the thing is that if you love God, you shouldn't have the fear. You shouldn't have the fear to go out and talk about him. You should, if you love your husband, you just got married, or you love your wife and you just got married, or your fiance, your boyfriend or girlfriend, don't you talk about them? Don't you spend so much time thinking about them? So the same way it should be with God. If you really love God, you should have no fears to talk about him, And at the end of the day, the Bible tells us in 1st of John, I think it's 1st of John 4, if I'm not mistaken, it says that God's love, the perfect love, casts out fear, because there's no fear in love. And you know what? If you love God, you should have no fear to speak about him. And I realized that today. I understood that verse so much more today with what happened to me, And I had a moment. I'm a human being. I'm not perfect, But the Bible says that we're perfected by God's love, and I feel like little by little, God is perfecting me in his love, and I want him to do the same for you. So to anyone listening to this, to my friends, my Christian friends especially, don't be afraid when you're in school, when you're at work, whatever. Don't be afraid to mention God because you're going to be politically incorrect. Don't do that. Don't do that, because you don't know if you're the only opportunity that somebody else has to hear about God. So I exhort you to have no fear. Have no fear. If you love God, you don't need to have fear. God didn't give us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of power, of love, and of self-control. So with that being said, I just want you guys to go out and talk about God without fear. I learned that lesson today. Wow. And I thought that I had that down packed, but apparently not. That little fear came into me today telling me, oh no, be careful. What if people judge you, or what if people get offended? But you know what? If someone gets offended, they get offended. God is not offensive. God is here to save you, to bring salvation, to bring you love. And if you get offended by that, then I can't do anything about that. Not to say that I'm going to go and advertently go and try to offend you. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go out and judge people either. That's not what Christianity is about. That's not what a relationship with God is about. It's just about love. And if you don't want to receive it, then I'm just going to keep moving. But I'm not going to shut up. I'm not going to be quiet because someone else might get offended when I talk about my God, when I talk about the love of my life. It's not going to happen. So, anyways, thanks for listening, guys. I know you probably have better things to do maybe, but hey, I think I needed to say this. And I was just going to post a note on Facebook, but while I was writing it, I was almost done, and then somehow I pressed backspace and it deleted the whole thing. So yeah. So I just ended up making a video, which I guess is better, because I think you guys would rather watch a video than read So anyways, thank you for listening. God bless you guys, and see you around. I'll watch my other videos when you get the chance. Okay. All right. Bye.